On tonight's show, more shocking details have come out about what really happened in Israel before and during October 7th. And let me tell you, the number one fan of those details is Israel. I'm lying. Plus, is climate change real or is it a hoax perpetrated by planet Earth to trick us all into switching to a more suitable deodorant for 120-degree temperatures? How dastardly can you get, Earth, if that is your real name? And one of my favorite special guests will be joining the show. And no, it's not the Verizon "Can you hear me now" guy. He actually works in the parking garage next door. Ironically, he's deaf now. Click thumbs up and subscribe because all of that and more is coming at you right now. Welcome to Unredacted tonight. I'm the most censored comedian in America, Lee Camp. And I'm done doing this voice for now. We all know that Hamas committed the October 7th, 2023 attack in Israel, killing 1,200 Israelis. Well, as covered on a previous episode, we know that the IDF actually killed hundreds of those Israelis, so 1,200 is a completely false number. But who cares about reality? Last I checked, it's overpriced, overhyped, and doesn't look nearly as good once you get its clothes off. But let's ignore the 1,200 number. What about everything else that happened that day? Do we know the truth? The media tells us that Hamas surprised Israel and committed this massacre out of the blue with no forewarning. Do I really need to say forewarning? Aren't all warnings are forewarnings? A post-warning is not, it's not a warning at all. It's just being a dick. Like someone gets attacked by a squirrel and then afterwards you yell, "Watch out for that squirrel!" You're just an asshole. Anyway, is it true that Israel had no warning, got caught with their pants down and their wigs tied on backwards, which is an expression I'm trying to start? To find out, all we need is an independent, unbiased investigation of that horrible day. But Benjamin Netanyahu has absolutely refused a true October 7th investigation. Yeah. He wants us to see the truth less than P. Diddy wants the courts to see the photos he took in Justin Bieber's attic during Mardi Gras. Ho, ho, ho. Here's from Haaretz. Netanyahu fended off a push for a national commission of inquiry into the October 7th failures, again claiming that first I want to beat Hamas. Yes, because that's going to happen any minute now. Before we can find out what really happened on October 7th, we need to ride flying unicorns while watching Dr. Phil do something legitimately medical. None of that is ever happening. And for some reason, it took the IDF hours to respond to the actions of Hamas on that horrible day. Is it possible no one noticed that Gazans had breached the fence that normally keeps them imprisoned? The IDF has a specific job for so-called spotters, who monitor all of the video feeds around the border fence, one of the most surveilled places on Earth. The spotters have no other job but to spot shit going down, and they saw nothing that day. Oh, wait, the exact opposite of that. As Haaretz reported, the parents of the spotters who had been killed on October 7th met with Netanyahu, and the parents told him about how their daughters had warned repeatedly of a Hamas invasion. A mother said her daughter told her, "There's going to be an invasion." "When did she tell you that?" Netanyahu asked at the meeting, and the mother replied, "During the time she was there. She said it several times, in fact." Another woman said, "For a month, they were telling us every day, it's trouble. Hamas, keep training." The prime minister said to her, "They told you that?" Yes, Netanyahu cannot believe that there was foreknowledge of October 7th. He's taken aback like Beyonce when she won her 35th Grammy. What? There's no way. This can't be. One of the few surviving spotters, Captain Amit Yerushalmi, has testified, "I saw training sessions. Sometimes it was once or twice a month. Later it started to be once a week, and even several times a day. We reported everything. We sat there for 2 years." The Institute of Defense Analysis put out an in-depth report on the failures of October 7th. In it, they say the Sentry's reports were validated by Signal's intelligence reports. In July 2023, one officer from the elite unit 8200 was crystal clear in her assessment, writing, "This is a plan designed to start a war. They are training with large forces for a big event. This is preparation for the real thing." Apparently, Hamas practiced invading Israel in clear view of the IDF more often than Steph Curry practices three-pointers, or Stephen Miller practices his 1,000-yard I've had dogs like peanut butter off my junk stare. But the Israeli government and the mainstream media want you to believe it's a security and intelligence failure. How did we miss this? Drats. We watched them practice for 2 years, but we just thought it was a community theater production of Intifada, the musical. We didn't think they'd actually do any of it. Professor Anthony Hall wrote, "Whole high-tech systems involving the gates for entry to and exit from Gaza were left completely open on that fateful morning. That kind of transgression could only originate in an intentional action, not in the mistake of some forgetful official. Unless they had Joe Biden watching the fence, this was no accident." Professor Hall also pointed out that many of the usual soldiers who patrol the Gaza walls just happened to have been sent to the West Bank on that day. Okay, fine. So the soldiers were moved away from the area, some surveillance was shut down, spotters were ignored for years, but still, I don't think we should believe there's anything strange about this unless we hear from an actual former IDF soldier who understands these systems. And there is no one like that speaking out. What?
How come there was zero response to the border and fence breaching? I cannot understand that. Personally, I served in the IDF 25 years ago in the intelligence forces. There's no way, in my view, that Israel did not know of what's coming. A cat moving alongside the fence is triggering all forces. So this?
A cat moving along the fence is noticeable by the IDF, but they failed to respond to hundreds of guys with guns? Maybe Hamas was dressed like cats. You ever think of that? Oh, wait, they did notice cats. Well, maybe the IDF thought it was Cats, the musical.
What happened to the strongest army in the world? How come border crossings were wide open? Something is very wrong here. Something is very strange.
Something is very strange, like Cats, the movie. But still, you can't really fault Israel unless they were warned by more legit powers like U.S. intelligence. U.S. intelligence warned of the potential for violence days before the Hamas attack. Okay, so there's that. But I bet it's a lie. We all know it's only real if the New York Times or the Washington Post say it's real. Gary, have they done that? I didn't think so. What? Israel knew Hamas's attack plan more than a year ago. A blueprint reviewed by the Times laid out the attack in detail. In detail? So not just the words October 7th bad things scrawled on a cocktail napkin? The approximately 40-page document, which the Israeli authorities codenamed Jericho Wall, outlined point by point exactly the kind of devastating invasion that led to the deaths of about 1,200 people. 40 pages? Yeah, but so what if Israel had the entire plan? Maybe Hamas didn't follow that plan at all. So it actually misled Israel. Israel had no idea what was going on. Hamas followed the blueprint with shocking precision. Alrighty then. That's just awesome. So Israel was warned by the U.S., warned by the spotters for years, warned by the literal Hamas blueprints. Is there anybody else who would like to get in on this whole warning Israel about the Hamas attack? I bet Cam Jansen saw some shit. Anybody else? Oh, Egypt warned Israel days before Hamas struck. And Hamas fighters openly practiced their maneuvers near the Gaza fence. What the hell is going on? Calling this a secret mission is like calling a popular TikTok dancing trend a secret mission. Anyone else want to get in? Hamas also posted video of the mock attack on social media weeks before the border breach. Hamas warned Israel on Instagram? Why haven't we heard about this more? Why hasn't it been in the mainstream media like constantly? Israel knew exactly what was going to happen. Oh, wait, here's the BBC talking about the attack. Surprise was crucial in Hamas's assault. Israeli intelligence failed to get inside the planning by Hamas for the attack. Okay. Well done, BBC. Surprise was crucial. Seems like this assault was about as surprising as when Israel announced they have nuclear weapons. What? They still haven't admitted it? Jesus. Okay, let me try that again. About as surprising as when BBC admitted their editor-in-chief is a group of drunk ferrets with brain parasites, and the parasites then eat a lot of paint chips. Better. On top of all of that, Netanyahu and others held back the IDF from military responses throughout the key hours during the morning of October 7th. What would you say if I told you Israel knew exactly what was going to happen on October 7th? Pulled soldiers away from the area, ignored all surveillance, didn't respond for a long time, and then when they finally responded, they murdered hundreds of their own people intentionally. Then they wiped the surveillance footage and buried the mountains of evidence. Would you think perhaps some people in power wanted it to happen? No, never. Because in order to believe that, you'd have to think Israel didn't mind the deaths of their own people. Oh, that's right. They murdered hundreds of their own people on that day, so we're pretty clear on where they stand on that. But what about the Nova Music Festival? A lot of the worst of October 7th took place at that festival, so clearly Israel didn't know anything was going to happen, or they would have never allowed that festival location. Actually, the Nova Festival was not originally intended to take place at the Reim site, with organizers moving it to that location only 2 days before it started. The festival goers were put in that location at the last minute as IDF spotters were saying repeatedly Hamas was preparing to do exactly what they did. Great idea. Let's hold Coachella on the former site of Fukushima. Should be fun. Former intelligence officer for the CIA, Philip Giraldi, said, so given all of the evidence, there likely was no intelligence failure to anticipate and counter the Hamas attack. Rather, there was a political decision made by the Israeli government that knew what might be coming and chose to let it proceed to provide a casus belli to destroy Gaza. Oh. And as we all know, casus belli is the part of the pork belly that tastes the most delicious. What's that? It's not. It means justification for war? What does that have to do with pork? I'll let you make your own decision about the truth about October 7th. But let's just finish with this. Days before that fateful day that Israel then used to justify genocide, Benjamin Netanyahu stood in front of the UN and held up a map with Gaza and the West Bank erased. So do you think he was looking for a way to achieve the thing he told the world he wanted to achieve? Listen, I think we can all agree climate change is not happening, okay? It's not real, folks. The places in America that are on fire regularly in the rainy season are only on fire because God is punishing them for believing climate change is real and sometimes also being gay. And we all know there's nothing more gay than climate change. The rainbow flag is the colors of the fires we're going to see sweep across the country. I can't even believe we're still talking about man-made climate change, okay? Everyone knows it's not real except for the 99.9% of peer-reviewed scientific papers that say climate change is caused by humans. Sure, that sounds bad, but how many studies could that actually be, okay? 10, 12? Oh, they say. It's according to a survey of 88,125 climate-related studies. A mere 88,000. But what about all those thousands of climate studies that no self-respecting scientist would review? The non-peer-reviewed studies. Those studies overwhelmingly say that climate change is, in fact, caused by our flat Earth teetering on the giant turtle on which the planet rests. And that turtle is getting tired, okay, because we eat too many bacon fried cheeseburgers. Please, folks, lose the love handles and the love back sacks, okay? Have some consideration for the turtle. Okay, fine. Maybe human-caused climate change is happening, but I'm only going to learn about it from the true masters of the world, the rich and the powerful. They are the only ones we should listen to. Here's one of our masters and the 11th richest person in the world, Bill Gates.
The top 1% emit more than the bottom 50% worldwide.
Sir.
Billionaires are the problem.
Bill Gates is not a climate hero. His actions mean more than his empty words.
How dare those young people interrupt that nice man in the loose-knit, inoffensive light blue sweater? Think of how much Bill Gates has done for you. He stole the Windows operating system so you can use your computer. He bought up so much of the World Health Organization that he makes the calls there so that you can something about health. He bought up more farmland in America than any other single human being so that you can be inspired by his devotion to buying things. Look at what I got, And he started a friendship with Jeffrey Epstein after Epstein had been found guilty of being a child sex offender so that you didn't have to. He was taking the bullet for all of us who don't want to befriend a sexual predator. You ingrates. Okay, fine. So maybe he's not a climate hero. Maybe his own personal greenhouse emissions are that of a small nation. But at least we have the Democrats leading the way on climate change boldly and bravely. Here's Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries.
Congressman Jeffries, how can you lecture us on democracy when it is the lukewarm, centrist, uninspiring policies of the Democrats that have led us to Trump?
What? Lukewarm, uninspiring? But Biden and the Dems did so much about climate crisis. Biden said he was going to put in 500,000 electric vehicle chargers across the whole country, and he did it, okay? He passed that law. Here's from the Associated Press this past November after he left office. There are currently 214 operational chargers in 12 states that have been funded through the law. 214. Well, that's not nothing, okay? In fact, I looked it up. That's 0.04% of what he promised, which really ain't bad for a Democrat, honestly. New motto, Democrats, we'll get you 0.04% of what we promised. And you could take that to the bank. Anyway, these mean protesters should let the nice Mr. Jeffries speak. He doesn't have anything to do with fossil fuels, okay? He's not a climate villain. He's not taking money from fossil fuel companies. Let the man speak.
Our planet is literally burning. Our democracy is crumbling. And you are still taking money from fossil fuel corporations.
Oh, I see. But fossil fuel companies aren't in his top contributors. His top contributors are, let's see, APEC and BlackRock. Oh, God. That's like being funded by Satan and runny diarrhea. And BlackRock is one of the worst climate villains on the planet, since they're the biggest shareholders in big oil, plastics, chemicals, deforestation, weapons contractors, and I think bed bugs. They invest heavily in bed bugs. It's awful. But what do you want from poor Hakeem, okay? To take money from moral sources? Who has the time? Fine, let's hear from another billionaire, because they are clearly our gurus, our leaders, our George Clooney's, if you will. Let's hear from climate leader, former Treasury Secretary, and former head of the National Economic Council under Obama, Larry Summers. And you children better not interrupt this man. You're going on timeout.
The billionaires are the problem. You pushed to lift the ban on oil exports, and now the U.S. is the world's largest oil producer.
I'm not going to engage in any further dialogue.
We need clean air.
So he was one of the main voices behind the U.S. pumping more oil than ever at a time while our planet is heating up and shit's on fire and we're destroying our future? Well, it's still not nice to interrupt people, okay? You should let them speak when they're trying to convince us to let the planet die. Sociopathic, future-killing murderers are people too, okay? They should get to be heard in a polite and cordial manner. If we don't have that, what do we have? So therefore, I just want to say no one else should interrupt or disrupt or some other rupt our so-called leaders when they speak in public. Do not disrupt their ability to get their work done, okay? Because without them getting their work done efficiently, we might have a future. And who wants that? Another Fast and Furious movie? What? What are we here for? And now for our segment, Based in the Basement, let's bring in special guest and former Redacted Tonight senior correspondent, Naomi Caravani. Naomi, hello.
Hello, Lee.
It's good to see you. So, egg prices have been shooting through the roof. It's caused shortages across the country. You've done some research into how Americans are dealing with this, right?
Yeah, I've done some of my own research, and it turns out Americans are not willing to acknowledge the shortage, and I've been in the business of trafficking eggs.
You're trafficking eggs? To and from where?
Mexico. Premium south of the border eggs.
Out of Mexico into the United States. Should I ask where you hide them, or does that get a little TMI?
Oh, well, spare tires, buttholes, whatever you can find that day. Yeah, egg seizure. It's a dangerous business, Lee. Egg seizures are up across the board between the Canada border and the Mexico border. And so much so that fentanyl seizures are down.
Are you making good money? Is this good money in this?
Oh, this is, yeah. People really want a complete breakfast. They're not willing to give that up.
I know you talked before about selling your eggs, but that was something else, right?
Yeah, you can't really freeze these eggs. That kind of damages the embryos.
And the prices in Mexico have not gone up at all. This is a distinctly American thing.
Yeah, the prices in Mexico, the prices in Canada somehow have stayed low. This has to do with the American habit of stuffing 1 million chickens into one place, and then when one chicken gets bird flu, they all get bird flu. But one chicken's bird flu is another small business opportunity.
When you get across the border, are you crawling through tunnels? Or are you sweet talking a border agent? How does that work?
Yeah, sometimes the sweet talk works. Sometimes they check you. I've been apprehended at the border a couple times, but I'm hopeful that I can continue the business and I won't be sent to the Salvadorian mega prison along with the other migrants.
A part of this shortage has to do with Americans just buying like 12 cartons of eggs because they're worried, like stocking up, hoarding eggs, right?
I believe that is true. Most grocery stores have a quota, 1 carton per family, but in my business, no quotas. You can buy as many as you want, but they are market price. It's basically like you're buying the fish of the day.
You can buy as many of the butthole eggs as you'd like. That's good to hear. This reminds me a little bit of the great toilet paper shortage of 2022.
Yeah, I was in that business too. It was not as lucrative, I've got to say. Eggs are definitely where it's at.
All right. Well, thank you for bringing us that report from the basement. Where can people follow all of your work?
Other than my egg selling side hustle, I'm also continuing my other side hustle of stand-up comedy. You can check me out. I'll be in Brooklyn April 26th. You can get those tickets at naomicaravani.com, and I'll have other shows coming up in your area. Check them out.
Thanks a lot, Naomi. It's good to see you.
Great to see you too, Lee.
And now it's time for your headlines from the future. Coming up in 2 weeks, you'll read people around Trump totally making up federal agencies for him to abolish. And coming up in 2 weeks and 1 day, we'll hear President Trump abolishes Department of Musical Agriculture and Casseroles. Breaking news you'll learn in June, Hollywood screenwriter racking brain to come up with dystopian future worse than this shit right now. And in just 5 days, you'll find out President Zelensky hoping he'll walk out of the peace talks with Crimea and the whole bowl of mints on the table. Finally, in mid-April, you'll find out Los Angeles mayor clearly hoping nation won't notice Pacific Palisades has been replaced with a set of ER. That's the show, but before you go, please make sure this show can continue by becoming a member for $6 a month at leecamp.net, my locals page, or at patreon.com/leecamp. Plus, you get all kinds of cool perks like my ebook, Dangerous Ideas. Also, if you're watching this on Richard Wolf's YouTube channel, please make sure you also subscribe to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@unredacted tonight. You can also just look up Lee Camp Unredacted Tonight. You should be able to find it. Until next time, remember, the revolution will have laughter. Keep fighting.